Boom! We are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Nolan Hawkeye Anthony YouTube channel. And I thank all of you for being here, wherever you may be. And of course, however you may be listening. I just want to start off by saying that the overwhelming support for this channel has been simply just amazing and so illuminating and just I'm very grateful. I don't really know all the words to articulate it, but there's so many people who are so kind and reach out and say thank you for the content that you make. And, I love watching the content, just saying very, very sweet, kind things. And, I always respond back, this is nothing. I love to do this. I love to talk about Iowa Hawkeye sports. I love to talk about sports in general. And in general, I like to talk. So, and it's just really, nice, and it's no sweat to make this type of content. Of course, it doesn't always fit right into the schedule. Of course, I can't, do this full time quite yet. I mean, I guess I could, but if I decided to get rid of, my profession and then solely focus on this, but, it's really, really nice. And, I like to take any moment I can to say thank you and how grateful I am, because at the end of the day, this is something that I enjoy to do. And I always tell people that it's you guys who I should be saying thank you to more often, because there's so much other entertainment out there. There's so many other things to watch and listen to. And, but some of you guys choose to be here with me, and I really appreciate that. All right, guys, welcome to week 3 Big Ten Whip Around show again. So thank you. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you, guys. This is the week 3 Big Ten Whip Around show. First year that we are doing this. And again, we have more data. We have more games that have been played. There wasn't as much craziness that occurred this week. It's pretty straightforward. I would say most of the teams that were supposed to win did win. Not really a ton of drama. And so I'll be giving you guys my first power ranking from, combined East and West. I'm going to do 7 teams. I'm not going to do every single team because, it's really hard to keep track of anything past the top 8. I decided to do 7. I will give you guys one extra one this week just because I think it's kind of like a 7A, 7B type thing. And of course, I'll do my Big Ten West, Big Ten East power rankings. All right, guys, let's dive into this. By the way, if you guys are not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Let's get to 2,000 subs by the end of the year. At the very least, like, comment, and share. You guys know the drill. Here are the Big Ten weeks scores for week 3. Actually, that's week 4 there, which I'll show you guys what the games that are coming up next week. The Iowa Hawkeyes, of course, and I am an Iowa Hawkeye fan, have the biggest game of the year thus far. I think you can make the case that it's the biggest game, period, of the year. I think it's probably between Penn State, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Those are probably the top 3 games on the Iowa Hawkeye schedule this year. Big week. Iowa, it doesn't look to be great with Luke Lachey. I'll talk more about it in the Iowa versus Penn State game preview. The good news for Iowa is that if there was any position that Iowa has enough depth where they would not be, how do I put this? They'll still be impacted. And don't get me wrong, losing Luke Lachey, who will be an NFL tight end, is definitely a big deal. Okay, he's on track to be an NFL tight end. That is definitely a big deal. Anytime you lose a 6'7" target that can move the way Luke Lachey does, it's a big deal. But the tight end position is a well-coached position group for the Iowa Hawkeyes. They have Steven Stilianos, who has had Division I reps at Lafayette, and last year did not see any game action, but Kirk Ferentz was very complimentary of him. And he now has an opening. And who knows, with the right type of season, he may be on his way to the NFL. I mean, I would not put it past an Iowa tight end who hasn't had a ton of, Power 5 reps to have a really good season. And because of the prestige that is attached to the Iowa Hawkeye tight end group, gets drafted. I would not be surprised by that in the least. So he has an opening. Iowa has, and he's an older guy, good blocker. Iowa also has Addison Ostrenga that they are really positive about. He is a true sophomore from the state of Wisconsin. He was initially actually a Iowa Hawkeye baseball commit. And what happened that year is Iowa went after probably 4 tight end targets that all had Iowa high on their list. It was kind of on the heels of the racial allegation situation at Iowa. Brian Ferentz, was still the tight end coach for Iowa and, the primary recruiter at the tight end position. So all of these guys, and I'll just name who they were: Andrew Keller, who ended up at Iowa State, Micah Riley Decker. I think there was a guy from the state. Yeah. Eli Raridan out of the state of Iowa, West Des Moines Valley, all very high on the Iowa Hawkeyes, and they all chose to go elsewhere. And Iowa, of course, had Addison Ostrenga, more of a project type recruit on their list. And look at him now. He's a true sophomore, saw reps last year, and now he's well positioned to be an Iowa starting tight end next year. I mean, you never know. And that's just classic Iowa football, where they don't get the number 1 guy on their recruiting list. They find another guy and they develop him into, a potentially all Big Ten guy. So you never know what can happen. But so that's the situation with Iowa. We'll get back to them. Wisconsin beat Georgia Southern. They rebound off of their loss to Washington State on the road. It was a good rebound victory for the Wisconsin Badgers. Not really a ton to say. I mean, they took care of business. Georgia Southern is 2-1. Actually, not a bad record. I don't think it was a terrible opponent. And Wisconsin took care of business. Mordecai had a decent game, 236 yards passing. Wisconsin was able to get Braylon Allen back on track with 94 yards and 2 tubs. You'll take that. You'll take that. If you're Wisconsin, you'll take that type of game any day of the week. Here are the team stats. 383 passing yards for Georgia Southern. If you're Wisconsin, you definitely want to take a look. I mean, they gave up 455 yards altogether. And I think that that's too much. Yet again, Wisconsin kind of the same as Washington State, giving up too many yards. The difference is that Georgia Southern was not able to capitalize. Now, Wisconsin did have 451 yards of total offense, pretty balanced, 244 yards through the air, 207 rushing yards. I think if you're Wisconsin, you'll take that type of offensive production. You'd like to see Mordecai have a few, at least one passing touchdown, but 19 of 30, 236 yards, clean sheet, no turnovers. I think you take it. You have 2 guys, one, Malusi, 61 yards, Allen with 94. I mean, and Mordecai had it going on the ground too a little bit, 36 yards. I think you would take that. every day of the week. So Wisconsin picks up the victory again. I don't think they would love to have the defensive night that they have, but they still held Georgia Southern to 14 points. I mean, at the end of the day, yards are one thing, scoring is quite another. And, to me, total defense is important. It's not nothing, but I think total defense is on the way to a good scoring defense. Not always, but usually, rather than it being the other way around. So, at the end of the day, giving up 14 points is not bad. Indiana played ACC opponent Louisville, and they lost. Louisville is now 3-0. Indiana lost by 7 points. I'm sure they'd like to have that one back. They were in Indianapolis. It was essentially a home game for Indiana. T. Jackson had a pretty nice game with 300 yards, 1 TD. Go ahead and click on the box score here. Indiana is now 1-2 on the season. They had 422 yards of total offense, but they gave up 357. T. Jackson, 229 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 INT, 24 of 34 passing. Not bad. Sure, he'd like to have the INT back. Indiana struggled mightily to run the football, whereas conversely, Louisville did not, and that was the difference in the ball game there. Minnesota absolutely got shellacked by North Carolina. And I said last week that this was going to be a major measuring stick type game for Minnesota. And although they were on the road, it's never easy to win on the road. I think North Carolina, who knows, maybe North Carolina is better than their current 20th in the country ranking. Maybe they're actually a top 10 team. Only time will tell. But at the moment, it seemed like a winnable game. And ultimately, what happened here is Minnesota, all year long, they've struggled offensively. They weren't able to stop North Carolina defensively, and they lost. They got beat by 21 points, or let's see, 13, 23, 30, almost 20 points. So, I'm sure they'll rebound. They'll take a look back at it. Let's look at the box score here. Take a look at what we got. 303 yards of total offense. That's not bad if you don't give up 519 yards of total offense, as North Carolina was able to do. North Carolina passed for 414 yards. May had 414 yards, 2 TDs, 2 INTs, 29 of 40. They just lit Minnesota up through the air. Absolutely lit them up. And they still had 105 yards rushing, which I think you'll take if you're North Carolina. If you can have 300 plus yards through the air, you'll take hitting the 100-yard mark running. So Minnesota will have to take a look at that. It's yet another game from Ethan Kaliakmanis, where it was mostly a below average performance. I think if you are a Minnesota fan, you need to kind of because Minnesota has enjoyed and at times been kind of ungrateful for the veteranship and kind of steady production of Tanner Morgan. They no longer have Tanner Morgan. Now they have he's either a true sophomore or a redshirt freshman in Ethan Kaliakmanis, and there's going to be growing pains. So if you're Minnesota, you need to be okay with the growing pains in hopes that by the end of the, close to the end of the year, you see significant progress. And for next year, he's really ready to go. And it just is what it is. If you were to say to Minnesota fans that D. Taylor, true freshman out of Michigan, Iowa actually offered him, out of Walled Lake, Michigan. If you were to tell Minnesota fans that he was going to run for 138 yards, I think a lot of them would have been hopeful for the victory. But Minnesota definitely has some issues in the passing game right now, much like the Iowa Hawkeyes. So Minnesota will head back to the drawing board. It's definitely not the worst loss in the world. Who knows? Like I said, maybe North Carolina is a top 10 caliber team, and we will see. Another really big measuring stick type game was Penn State versus Illinois. Illinois kept the game close for a while. It was 16-7 at half. Penn State went up 16, 17, 18, 19, 22-7, had double digit, and Illinois just did not have enough offensively. And, they still allowed Penn State to score 30 points. If you're Illinois, you're never going to beat a team like Penn State if you're giving up 30 points. So much like last week, Illinois, and a lot of people are starting to say that Illinois and their season last year was a bit of fool's gold. And maybe it is. I don't want to take anything away from them. They still had a really solid year regardless. And at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter if it was fool's gold because the results are the results. But, Illinois back-to-back weeks at this point is really struggling defensively. Kansas pretty much got whatever they wanted on Illinois. So Illinois is now 1-2. We'll take a look at the box score. Man, 4 INTs thrown by Altmaier. Wow. Man, and he had a tough week last week too. You're not going to win football games, certainly not against Penn State, throwing 4 INTs. Drew Aller, 16-33, 208 yards, 0 TDs, 0 INTs. They got 3 other quarterbacks in there. But you're just not going to win football games throwing 4 INTs. Reggie Love, 55 yards, really didn't have a ton going on the ground, 62 yards rushing. Illinois still had 354 yards of total offense. Not bad. I mean, Penn State only had 30 more yards of total offense. But in football, the big difference is between, hitting the 30-point mark is being able to punch it in and capitalize and score points on solid drives and not turning it over. So Illinois is 1-2. Penn State improves to 3-0, has a massive top 25 showdown between Iowa and Penn State coming up. That's going to be a huge, huge game. Can't wait to talk about it in my Iowa versus Penn State preview. Duke beat Northwestern. Not a ton to say there. Duke is having a really solid season. Rutgers beat Virginia Tech. I know a lot of you are thinking, wow, Rutgers beat Virginia Tech. Hold your horses, folks. Virginia Tech also lost to Purdue, who also lost this week, who is 1-2 thus far. So Virginia Tech is not currently the Virginia Tech of old. Okay. So, it's still a Power 5 victory. Not bad, but let's pump our brake. Virginia Tech is not the Virginia Tech of Michael Vick. Okay. It's just not. So, good Power 5 victory for Rutgers. They're 3-0. They will absolutely take it. I think Rutgers is well on their way to a bowl season caliber season or bowl game caliber season. And if you look at Iowa's schedule, Rutgers, and this is what I always say, folks. I always say that it's hard before the season, to place a ton of stock in a team based off of their schedule, because you never know who is going to be what. You never know if one of the really good teams is going to have a really down season, much more down than expected by preseason prognosticators. And you never know which teams are going to have much better seasons than expected as well. So, that's why it's hard to go solely based off of the schedule. Ohio State smashed Western Kentucky. They improved to 3-0, 63-10. Iowa, late second half surge to win 41-10 over Western Michigan. Folks, here's the deal. Some people thought and this is always the case. Anytime I have any critique for the Iowa Hawkeyes, there are some Iowa fans who say I'm being too negative and I'm not being fair. In my eyes, that's exactly what I'm being, is fair. I'm not on here to just blow smoke. I'm on here to talk about the good and the bad. Okay. I'm not just gonna, when Iowa loses, come on this on my channel and say, well, Iowa did good here, here, and here. They lost, but they did good. I'm not a cheerleader like that. Okay. I'm going to point out what they did well and what they did not do well. I'm going to give you guys the best analysis I can give. And it is concerning where Cade McNamara is at 3 games into the season. Now, somebody, and this is why I always read the comment section, because every now and again, you get a gem like this. There was somebody in the comment section who pointed out rather, that Cade McNamara missed all of last year and missed a big portion of camp this year and things like that. And there's going to be some breaking in period for him. He's getting back into form. And there probably is some truth to that. Okay. There probably is some truth to that. But irregardless of that, thus far, he has not been what I thought he was going to be for the Iowa Hawkeyes. I mean, he's putting up similar numbers to Spencer Petras. And I don't think it's all his fault. And the funny thing is, I actually think Brian Ferentz has actually been, in a lot of regards, better than what we've seen the past 2 years at this point in the season. 3 games in, for what it's worth. But one thing that Iowa has not evolved to in like 10 years. And now we saw bits and pieces of it for like 1 season with Brian Ferentz early on. And I think a lot of that had to do with Greg Davis still being around and being able to help Brian Ferentz out. But by and large, Iowa still has the same route tree, same route concept and passing scheme that you would see from the 1980s. And when you have a quarterback like Cade McNamara, who is a short to intermediate passer, okay, he's not a guy that is going to drop dimes like Patrick Mahomes or, a Nate he doesn't have a big arm like Nate Stanley or Spencer Petras or CJ Beathard. He just doesn't. And so as an offensive coordinator, you need to realize that and do what he's good at and get his confidence up, give him some easy completions, bubbles, slants, comeback routes, post, or curl. But for Iowa, it's always the same. It's they'll do the same like 1980 route tree for like 3 plays where it's one wide receiver going long, doing a go route, one wide receiver doing a post, and another one just kind of coming out as a safety net. And then on the last play of the drive, they're facing 3rd and 10. They'll do, something interesting, either a play action or, and add some sexiness to their offense. But, they need to add that on first and second down. They really do. I don't know what happened to the Wildcat. It's stunning to me that the Wildcat was such a good formation for Iowa for 2 years. And now it's gone. And you cannot tell me that it's simply because Tyler Goodson graduated, because that's just, it's just not true. They still have the talent. Caleb Brown, Seth Anderson, any of the running backs on the Iowa roster that could line up the same way Tyler Goodson did. I don't understand why they don't run the Wildcat. So, and the second thing is, of course, the wide receiver production, the connection between Cade McNamara and the Iowa wide receivers. Okay. Iowa wide receivers this year, none of them have eclipsed 100 yards after 3 games. Nico Ragaini, aka Nico Ragaini, aka Nico Ragaini, is having the slowest season in his collegiate career at Iowa, which is stunning because he is a 6-year veteran. How is he having the slowest statistical season? And this is his 6th year. He could be on a training camp in the NFL right now. So that's something Iowa needs to look at. Of course, Luke Lachey went down, but of course, Iowa's defense played great. Iowa's running game was excellent. And there are a lot of positives. As I said, Ohio State smashed Western Kentucky. Nebraska got the victory over Northern Illinois. Gavin Williams, former Iowa Hawkeye, got a few carries for Northern Illinois. They won 35-11. Rocky Lombardi, West Des Moines Valley quarterback, formerly committed to Western Michigan. It feels like this is his 6th or 7th year in college football. Starting quarterback for Northern Illinois, but they lost. Now, Nebraska, good victory, good to get a win on the board. What is there to really say? Beating Northern Illinois. This is not one of the better Northern Illinois teams. What can you say? Thomas Fedone had a pretty good game, 4 receptions, 42 yards. And lastly, Michigan State got shellacked by number 8 Washington. And of course, their head coach is out. Last but not least, Michigan beat Bowling Green. Michigan has had a pretty easy non-conference slate. Purdue lost to ACC opponent Syracuse by 15 points. In West Lafayette, they just could not stop Syracuse. Purdue's defense has struggled thus far this year. And lastly, Maryland got a victory over Virginia, but of course, Virginia is 0-3. So there's somebody who has been commenting on the videos who keeps putting Maryland and Rutgers in his top 5. And I keep telling him, neither of them have played anybody. Virginia it's not as good of a victory as it appears by just looking at the name Virginia. They're 0-3. So, all right, guys, moving on here. I did want to show you guys my power rankings here. Which I will get pulled up. So here we go, guys. Here is my power rankings thus far, week 3 of the NCAA football season, Big Ten. I have Iowa number 1, Big Ten West, Wisconsin number 2, Minnesota just absolutely got shellacked, and they dropped to number 3. If you guys remember, Minnesota lost to North Carolina. Now, it's not a terrible loss. It's not. And, you know, I really debated whether to drop them a spot, you know, because they're still 2-1 like Wisconsin. But, you know, ultimately, their 2 victories are over teams that have losing records in Eastern Michigan and Nebraska. So, you know, and they got shellacked by North Carolina. And to me, that's not worthy of a number 2 team in the Big Ten West. Minnesota or Wisconsin number 2, Minnesota number 3, Illinois number 4, Purdue 5, Nebraska 6, Northwestern 7. Here's the thing, folks. The Big Ten West at this point is pretty much Iowa, Wisconsin and Minnesota in the top third, Illinois, Purdue, and Nebraska battling at 4, 5, 6. You know, you could flip-flop them any which way you want. The reason why I have Illinois ahead of Purdue and Nebraska is because Illinois has played Kansas, a Power 5 team, and they played Penn State. And they actually played Penn State pretty well for a half. Okay. Now they still got shellacked, but you know. So we'll see what happens after week 4. In the Big Ten East, Ohio State 1, Penn State 2, Michigan 3, not a ton of movement there. Rutgers 4, Maryland 5, Michigan State 6, and Indiana 7. You know, you could flip-flop Rutgers and Maryland, and I think that would be fine. And then, you know, really it's 1A, 1B, 1C between Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. My overall 1 through 7 is Ohio State 1, Penn State 2, Michigan 3, Iowa 4, Rutgers 5. And I have here 2 Power 5 wins for Rutgers. Why I have them ahead of Maryland and Wisconsin. Maryland 6, 7, Wisconsin. If I were to do an 8th team, it would probably be Minnesota. Okay. So that is my week 3 rankings, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. The Big Ten Whip Round show has been a success thus far, and I thank all of you. I expect this episode to continue to grow. Please share it with your friends, like, comment, subscribe. Let's get to 2,000 subs by the end of the year. And last but not least, DBAP, don't be a pussy willow on facts or feelings, because your feelings just don't matter. Love you guys. See you guys next time. Go Hawks. Bye-bye.